recording. Hello everyone and welcome to Handmade Hero. Today is not an actual Handmade Hero. As you know from the schedule, there is not a Handmade Hero scheduled until this weekend. But, well, let's be honest here. I have a reason for wanting to do a stream today. Mostly it's so that I am focused and don't think about eating, because I'm sure I'm going to get very hungry. I am scheduled to have a colonoscopy tomorrow, which is a very polite medical way of saying that someone is going to stick a camera up your butt. And one of the things that you have to do in that circumstance, unfortunately, is you have to be on a clear liquid diet. And a clear liquid diet means essentially you can't have any food, really, of any kind. You're talking about drinking ginger ale or eating Jell-O. So I just assume that I'm going to get pretty hungry today. I haven't had anything to eat today at all. And so I figured that one good way to do this would be to stream, because while I'm on stream, I have to be paying attention to what I'm saying and doing. And hopefully that will keep me from wanting to eat anything. I'm not going to be programming Handmade Hero because, like I said, we don't have a stream scheduled to this weekend. But I've got plenty of things I can program that aren't Handmade Hero. Obviously, we've got Handmade Ray. And more importantly, to today's thing, as you noticed that I flashed it, 4coder Custom Party. I had been waiting for quite some time, actually, to make any changes, really, to the custom layer that I wrote for 4coder, because I got most of what I needed when we first switched to 4coder, which you'll remember. I switched from GNU Emacs to 4coder, and really there weren't that many things that I didn't have. It implemented most of the features of Emacs. To this day, there's really only one feature of Emacs that it doesn't have, which is keyboard macro recording. Everything else that I ever used in Emacs, it has. Which is not to say that it has all the features of Emacs, because Emacs has so many random features, I don't even know what they all are. There's like package upon package upon package. So I couldn't tell you. But in terms of the actual Emacs features I used, 4coder had them all. Except for two things at the time that I stopped. One was the ability to jump anywhere in the program using iMenu, so you could jump to functions. You couldn't really jump to anything else. It was just functions. But I used that a lot. And the other was keyboard macro recording. So what I said was, well, I'll go back and revisit my custom layer once Alan adds either of those two features, because then I really will need them. And in the meantime, if 4coder adds stuff, I won't really go back and upgrade my custom layer much, even if I should, just because I'm going to save it in chunks. And so Alan recently added really good jump menus, and so it gave me the opportunity to say, all right, it's time to go revisit my custom layer. And so I've done a bunch of things with it. Now, I'll quickly go over the things that I've already done with it. I budgeted about 2 weeks for it, and I'm just about out of that time, so I only have like maybe a couple days left of edits to it. And I got what I wanted out of it, but now I'm trying to add maybe some things that are just more experimental and see if I can improve editing, that are just kind of like whimsical, like maybe this will be good, maybe it won't, and I don't know. So let me first kind of show you what the status of it is at the moment. And you'll have to ignore a little bit of it, that's the part that's a work in progress that we'll talk about a little bit later. So what I want you to do is ignore sort of the bottom part of the screen here that's got the numbers on it. Well, I guess I should start right away before I start clicking things. So the first thing I added was this thing, because again, there's like pretty robust jump lists in there now. So the first thing I did was I moved any commands that were very special purpose, rarely executed commands into a command lister. And I'd wanted this for a while. And this is great because now what I can do is anytime there's like a complex, perhaps very important, but just not very often used command, what I can do is put it in here instead of wasting a key binding on it. Before, the only way I had to execute anything was to use a key binding, and of course that's not very useful for things that are rarely used. So for example, toggle full screen is something that I wouldn't want to key bound to. It's just not something that hardly ever happens, but once in a while I want to do it. Like at startup, if I forget to launch with the -F flag, or if I want to like make it a window temporarily so that I can see my 4coder stuff at the same time I can see other things, stuff like that. So that's one good example of a thing that I've put in there. is that command lister. And that's a great thing because now anytime we want a complex command, we can just dump it in there and we don't have to worry about binding it to some key and other stuff like that. So once you've got the command lister, that's great for those sorts of things. I then immediately also added the idea of project switching. The reason for this is I don't really want to have to bother closing and reopening 4coder just to switch what I'm working on. This is not that relevant perhaps for Handmade Hero, where we tend to rather exclusively work on just Handmade Hero. But for my daily work, I've got a couple different things that are related to 1935 and our website and all these sorts of things. And all of those things are separated into projects, which I'm only building one of them at a time. I'm not building the website when I'm working on 1935 because they just have really no need to interrelate in that way. And so what I did is I added a switch project function, and what it does is it reads a master project file that just says where are all the projects that you want to be able to switch between, and then it'll list them. So you can see on this machine I only have 5 of them, but on my machine maybe I've got more. And so that's what that's for, and it does exactly what you'd think. So this is before I used to load those PRJ files myself. Now I don't do that anymore. I just use the project switcher to switch between them anytime I want. Now, another thing that I added to the project control stuff is that in the old days when I opened a project, it just came up with a blank screen. It was like, okay, now go pick a thing to edit. And one of the things I've been doing on 4coder is because I license the source code from Alan, because basically I'm like, look, this is going to be my editor for the foreseeable future unless I write my own at some point. So until then, I need access to the source code because, if Alan decides that he's just, he's had enough and he decides he's going to go down to Bermuda and live a life of leisure, I need some way to keep upgrading this thing. And I need it to always be working, right? So I license the source code for him, which means I have access to the source code, which means I can make modifications to the core. I've made a ton of modifications to the core, all of which I'm submitting back to Alan. Hopefully he'll mainline most, if not all of them. But one of the things I added to the core was knowledge about the state of files on the drive in terms of what the Windows reports as their last write time. So one thing that I do now is if you open a project, like let's say we go to open Handmade Hero on here, what I will do is I'll load whatever the last file is that we touched, right? So wherever the last file is that got modified, we will load that file automatically. So, come up in Handmade Hero, I guess this was the one with the highest write time. Now granted, I haven't tested hardly any of this stuff, so maybe it's buggy. But maybe we were in OpenGL at the end, I don't know. So that just is a nice little minor feature that just says, hey, let's get you started kind of more where you left off. I didn't really want to do something where I saved the state of 4coder. I could have, it's not that hard. You could have saved the 2 buffers that you were looking at and your positions in them. I don't necessarily want that because it seemed like it was one of those things that adds a fair bit of complexity. It's leaving these files on your drive now, like state files, and I don't really know that I care. So I decided not to go there just as a judicious decision, but I could totally see doing that at some point if someone really wanted that. So I felt like this was a way that you could sort of get halfway to that feature without storing any state information on the drive, which I don't like. I don't like it when things leave VC directories and Git directories and all this crap on my drive. Just deal with your stuff, right? Minimize that. I just don't like that. I like the drive to remain as pristine as possible. It's just an OCD kind of cleanliness thing that is kind of the way that I think about things. Now, some other things that you'll notice about what's going on now is you can see that we now have very extensive syntax highlighting, much more extensive than we had in the past. So, for example, you'll note that functions are now anything that's a function defined in the project, not external. So a Windows function wouldn't get it, and an OpenGL function wouldn't get it. But anything defined in the project, meaning I can jump to it, meaning I've got the source, that will be highlighted now. And again, that was something I modified 4coder core for. And similarly, things like pound defines, they will show up in blue. And same with types. Any type that's defined in the project char is not a type, that's a keyword, so that's actually a separate thing. But something like OpenGL info, for example, that is a type we define, and that will get highlighted as well. So I added all of that into 4coder as well, and in sort of that whole process of adding that sort of code awareness, I've kind of taken 4coder to the point where it's actually much more knowledgeable about the source code right now than, say, Emacs was. Emacs, you need to use this thing called e-tags. They're a piece of crap. It never seemed to work right, and they were overbearing and slow and everything, right? 4coder now will just automatically do the right thing for my code base anyway, all the time pretty much. And so if, for example, I anytime want to be able to jump to anything in the project, I just can. So for example, if I wanted to jump to that OpenGL info struct, you can see that it'll take me right there because now it knows where it is and it knows how to get me there. And the same is true for any function or any pound define. I want to go to that GL color attachment, right? I can go right to it. And so this is really good for code awareness. It's also pretty good for if you're working outside of your own code base. But even on Handmade Hero, where I've written everything and it's not that big, it's still really nice because I don't have to remember where is clear rectangle. I can just go to it, right? And there it is. Furthermore, it's a nice little handy way to do quick searching. If I want to know what kind of functions might have the word rectangle in them, I can just do this and actually get there. It's pretty easy, right? Seeing everything that has the word rectangle in it. And so that's pretty nice as well. In terms of what's going on here with software texture, I'll be completely honest with you. I have no idea why it thinks that's a preproc. It looks, or maybe that's not what it thinks it is. Again, none of this stuff has been tested, so a lot of it could be sort of slightly weird. I have no idea why software texture is getting special treatment there. That's probably something we should figure out. It might be because it thinks it's a forward declaration of some kind color-wise. I may not be filtering out forward declarations. That's something I should probably look at. In fact, let's just go look at it now. So inside the renderer, there's... Oh, you know what? I gotta actually open 4coder. So we're going to have to use two versions of 4coder here, and this is going to be confusing. One is the one that's in progress that we're working on, and the other is like a stable version. So I'm loading a stable version here that we're not going to touch, because if we break it, we won't be able to edit, right? And so I go to 4coder here, and now I've got 4coder open. I can build 4coder like so, right? And you can notice one of the other things I've done is added a like dedicated compile window here that we can control. So when I rebuild 4coder, it's rebuilding the one that I will launch from here. So then I can relaunch this one, and I can say, okay, let's go back and look at that situation in Handmade Hero, where software texture was, yeah, you can see it's just very strange. It's like, it's got a highlight there. And if you look, when you do it here, it doesn't have that. So it knows it's a type, but for some reason it's getting an unusual color there. And so I think that's just a bug, and let's go track it down. So inside 4coder KC render, this is where we're doing all of the syntax highlighting. And the way that I do it is when I'm actually looking at a buffer that's ready to be displayed, at that time I look at just what's inside the visible region, and I color anything that matches a hash table lookup that's been built from all of the types and stuff in the system. And so if we look at that function, which I believe is here, no, that's rendering closure names. Here it is, mark matches. So in here, what we do is, we've got tags, which are things that are inserted into the buffer for me for labeling things. We'll talk about those later. But in here, what I've got is a thing that iterates over tokens and looks to see whether or not they match anything in the index of types and so on, right? And so what you can see here is I get element by name, and I pull that out, and then I ask for whatever the color should be. And what you can see here is exactly sort of what I suggested was a problem. And let me explain to you what the problem is. So I think I've successfully guessed what the bug actually is. If you look at what happens with the way I build the index, I create these things called index contact elements, and they are just things that I want to be indexed. Each one of them has a color that's associated with it. Those colors are based on the type, but I intentionally made it so that each one has their own color in case you want to do things later where you specifically highlight particular ones or anything like that. But what you'll notice is this can have multiple things of the same name. This is intentional. If, for example, I have the, you can see right here, the pound-defined logf appears multiple times in 4coder's code, I want to know that. I want to know all of those places where, like, I want to know that it's defined multiple times. I don't want them collapsed down into one record. What that means is that if I see something twice, once as one type, once as another, I will have two entries, each with different types. Now, the reason why this is important is because some of those things may, and I'm highlighting this one here, be something that shouldn't really have much effect on the color unless it's the only time it appears. So in this case, for a forward declaration, I don't want that to override the color if the thing was a function or a type defined somewhere else, right? So what I want to do here is when I'm getting the element by name, I want to search to make sure that as I go through those elements, I'm going to pick the one that's not a forward declaration if I can avoid it. Now that's pretty easy to do. I just need some way of sort of iterating over them. And so if we look at get element by name, you can see in here the way that that works is it just loops over the elements till it finds ones that's the same, right? And so I can do the same thing on the outside here. I can just say, look, give me all of the, that's not correct at all, by the way. Give me all of the ones that exist in here. So let's go through each element that I find. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, if this one is the only one, then you can use it. But if it's a forward declaration, and you've already got the color from some other type, don't override it. All right. So the way I might do this, in fact, you know what, there's a slightly easier way to do this. Maybe I'll do it this way instead. Maybe what I'll do is I'll preserve sort of the way it was written before, where it was looking like this. And what I'll do here is I'll say, look, let me get the element. If the element is valid and the element type happens to be a forward declaration, if that's true, then what I want to do is look to see if there's another one, right? Look to see if I can go one forward. So, you know, index content element next equals that. If they're equivalent, then lm equals next, right? And what I could do here is actually do this as a while loop. So while I have an element and the type is a forward declaration, I can go forwards, right? I can advance. So I'm going to get the next one in the buffer. I'm going to see whether or not it's the same, and you know, like I'm going to double check to see whether or not it still matches the name that I was looking for. And if it does, then I'll move forward, right? So in the event that it does not match or I don't get one, so I should also say, you know, let's say it's valid, right? In fact, I could even do that a little earlier. I can say if there's a valid element and it's got a valid next pointer and the type of the element that I'm on is forward declaration, then see if you can move, this is a hash. I don't know why I let it complete to that. See if you can move forward. If you can, then do so. And that way we won't have that situation of forward declarations overriding the color. So things that are forward declared will just show up as specifically a different color, so you know they're not defined in the project. But things that do have a type that just happen to get forward declared but were defined somewhere in the project, they will show up differently. So, okay, they will show up with their correct like color by type or whatever, right? So now let's switch to Handmade Hero since we happen to have that as a nice case here. Let's look at the surface texture or whatever it's called. What was it called? Texture or something or other. Software texture. And there we go. So we fixed that, that bug there, right? Okay. So that's good. That's a good fix. Let's talk about some of the other things we did, or I did rather. So I added to do important note and that sort of stuff highlighting. Alan had added a sort of a makeshift little experimental version of that would just highlight the word to do anywhere. I wanted it only in comments, and I also wanted to be able to have many of those. So to do, note, study, important. I don't know if I have any of those in this code. I don't think I do, but I have lots of notes, for example. Oh, you know what? I can do it, search a different way. All right, so we'll talk about that. So inside comments, I highlight those now, and I also keep track of them. Now, when you do jump, I don't normally expose those to the jump lister because I only use types, functions, pound defines, and the like, right, for declarations. So what I wanted to do is have another way I could jump, and so I have another jumping type. Oh, and I have to, obviously this is an experimental one. I haven't actually pushed this to main yet. So if did I accidentally load Handmade Hero in, no, I closed it, right? I think so. Yeah. So if I go ahead and run it again here, and I switch to like Handmade Hero, one of the things you can see is if I jump, you know, there's no notes or to-dos or anything in here. But if I want a listing of those, I can actually use this other jump lister that I made, which allows you to pick exactly the type that you want to jump to first. And it will only list those types. So now you can use the ones that appear in the regular jump list as well. So I can pick on function, and now I just see a list of the functions that are defined inside the program, right? I can also ask for forward declarations and see just the things that are forward declared, which could be any of the structs. Some of those structs may also be defined. Some of them may be only forward declared, but it's nice because I can kind of see everywhere the something is forward declared, and I can jump right to that. Now, similarly, I can look at all my to-dos, right? Here's all my to-dos in a nice big list. I can look at any of them, right? And I can look at anything, notes that I've made in the code, right? All of that stuff is now indexed. Like I said, way better than Emacs ever did. Emacs was lousy at letting you navigate your source tree. We're not perhaps as good as a full compile, so some of the things that like IntelliSense can do when it works, which is never, but let's say it actually worked, or if you just were sane and wrote a thing that loaded a PDB and marked up your text or whatever. So some things we don't do, I don't parse structs, like their contents. So autocomplete doesn't know like, oh, this, and I don't parse variables. So it doesn't look and go, oh, this variable's of this type, so you probably only want to autocomplete like the members that should be in there. That'd be a nice to have, but I don't actually know that it's worth the effort, so I didn't bother, right? This is a premium ginger ale. It contains carbonated spring water, cane sugar, citric acid, natural gingers, natural flavors, and natural caramel. I'll be honest, since caramel is sugar that's been heated in a pot, I'm not sure how you make natural caramel because it seems like it has to be man-made, but maybe they found like a hot spring somewhere with sugar that drips off of a tree and then they pan it out of there, which explains the high price of this premium ginger ale. All right, so what I want to do now is talk about some of the other things that are in there for comment parsing. I added a math parser for comment parsing. And those of you who saw the stream on Mustache, I showed a little bit of this. What happens in there is if I was to open, let me say, a temp file here. So I do temp test.cpp. And by the way, I don't know how to make this stop happening. If I do a test.cpp and I hit return, I don't know how to say in 4coder only this file. And Alan is probably not watching, but I would like something that actually had like a give me a specific like like this file name only, and I should probably add that. I don't have that. Anyway, one of the things I do now is I parse mathematical expressions inside comments and just give you the results, because I was tired of switching over to this dumb thing. I don't know what this thing, speed crunch. I can get rid of that now, and I don't really need it. I don't want it. I just want to be able to put math in the comments, so I do now, and you can see how it works. You do like 1024 times 1024, and it produces the result here for you. It also comma paginates it. Oh, cat! I don't think you guys have ever met Molly. Hello, Molly. Hey, do you want to say hi? Do you want to say hi? You want to see outside. See, I would let you. I don't know if that's going to mess up our light. Let's see if we can do that. How bad is that if I let Molly have a little bit of sun so she doesn't like to be left. Oh, there you go. How you doing, kid? You doing okay? Yeah? Okay. She's just going to look out the window. She's a good kitten. Anyway, so here's the situation. It runs a really crappy parser, and it just prints the output. It paginates with commas. I actually left some code in there that you can choose whether you want commas or periods and stuff for in case Alan wants to merge it into the core and switch on internationalization. I don't know if he has that in there or not, but it's set up for that. And so anyway, you can do math and see pretty quickly what's going on, which is pretty nice. It also is smart enough to go, hey, look, if it's a whole number, don't, print out the whole crazy decimal. But if it's not a whole number, go ahead and do it. So that's kind of nice too. It's just a nice feature to have in there. So really, like there's a bunch of other little things that I did, but I don't think they're super relevant now to go over. Obviously, I tried some things with like marking regions. You can see like I have it so that it marks the region now that you're on, and stuff like that. And you could it'll also highlight things like the current token and crap like that. But again, that's not super relevant. We don't really have to talk much about that stuff. It's pretty boring stuff. So I think I've covered most of the mods. There's probably some things that I'm forgetting in there, but that's basically how it goes. And so what I want to do now is focus on some new stuff that I'd like to add. And there's some features that there's some polish that still needs to be done. And so that's obviously something that I'll look at some other time. But at least for today, what I'd like to do is focus primarily on implementing some new features, experimental features. So let's talk about how that is going to go. So at the moment, you can kind of see what I'm thinking about with respect to that down here. And what you can see is I've made these sort of numbered like bins, right? I call this temporarily because it needed a name. I call this the F bar, which sounds vaguely sort of vaguely expletive, but it's not. Just because it corresponds to the function keys. And you'll notice that this is the place where the build is happening. So if I were to switch projects here, and remember, this is our actual editor, the one that we're using to edit the 4coder code. This is the running 4coder test, which is not. But if I were to load something up, like handmade Ray, and do a build, the build still happens down in here. And at the moment, I have not done anything to implement harmonious coexistence of these little buttons here with the build itself. And so that, in addition to lots of other things, are what we're going to start working on today. Now, what I did in prep was those things correspond to the two things, right? So first of all, at any time, So meaning no matter what you're doing in the editor, the F keys are bound to what I call executing an F bin. So an F bar is a collection of F bins. F bins are the things you see there. And if I hit an F key, it will execute one of these. Now, that does absolutely nothing right now. And of course, F12 is the hotkey for break into the bugger. So, you know, hopefully someday we won't have Visual Studio around, or I can unbind that key, because I never want that. To be the case, I'd rather have F12 available for use, but ignoring that. So hitting one of those will execute that bin. Now, all I did at the moment is made it so that it was clear that that's happening, right, as you can see. And for those of you who don't know, my 4coder setup is modal. And so the reason that it's modal is because one of the things that I felt was a problem for repetitive stress injury, carpal tunnel syndrome, et cetera, is the Emacs way of having like tons of crazy button mashing, like Control Alt this or Alt that or Control this or blah, blah, blah. Holding down keys is just not great. And especially if you tweak your hand into a particular position. You'd have to ask Emily what actual repetitive kind of strain injuries you're going to get from that sort of thing. I have no idea. I don't know if carpal tunnel's likely. It's probably not, because you're not pressing that hard on the keys. But just tendinitis and general discomfort, the same kind of stuff you get from using a video game controller too long, all that sort of stuff. It's just not great. And so what I did when I switched to 4coder, and I had done this on Emacs as well, I was like, let me try to switch to something modal, which means, like, you know, VI is an example of a very modal editor, right? It's like you're either in the mode where you're entering text or in the mode where you're operating on stuff. And between those two modes, it controls whether or not an ordinary key press, like the F key or the E key or, you know, D key, whatever, just a regular key, whether that is effectively like hitting Control that key, or whether it just inserts the key. And so it's really not that much different. And VI, that's just one of the things about VI, right? There's a lot of things about VI and its philosophy that have nothing to do with that. But that part is very different from Emacs. Emacs never really had two modes. It was always about, if you wanted to do a command, you hold down the Control key and hit a key. It was never about, I switch into command mode and then I just hit the regular key and it does something. And so I switched over to a more VI-like thing for that. And it's, since I was never a VI user, it's not at all based on VI. If you were a VI user, I think you would probably try to import a bunch of the conventions that you were used to, but I'm not, so I'm not going to. Anyway, so when I did that modal thing, you can see that I switch between them, and you've probably seen me do that on Handmade Hero. There's actually a very strong color indication that that's happening. When you look at the cursor, it's red if I'm in command execution mode, and that's the thing that allows me to do stuff like, you know, mark a region or whatever, or cut and paste it, do those sorts of things, or invoke the jump menu, for example. That's just hitting the J key. Whereas if I'm in insertion mode and it's green, anything I hit just inserts the key. There is no way to execute any command, except that now I am adding these, because the F keys don't have any corresponding way to insert anything. So they're bound at all times, right? They're bound regardless of what mode you're in. Now, I may change my mind about that as I go down this path a little bit more and have the two modes do different things when you hit the F keys, but at the moment, I don't intend to. Now, when you are in regular mode editing things, obviously you hit the 4 key, 5 key, 1 key, it inserts that number. That's just how editing text works. But if you switch into command mode, now what I've also said is when you hit the corresponding number key to an F key, and also I should note that the equals and minus keys I've mapped to 11 and 12, and the 0 key I mapped to 10. So it's basically still the straight button bar just across the top of your keyboard, right? Those correspond to the bins, and they will select a particular bin, right? They'll just make it like the active bin. Does that make sense? Now, of course, you may be asking yourself, and I strongly suspect that you are, what is all this for? Who cares? Like, what are you going to do with this? Well, it occurs to me, and has always occurred to me since time immemorial, that most of the things that I do in my editor, I do again, right? And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that VI has some sort of support for this, and Emacs had some sort of support for this, which is to say that anytime you did something complicated, such as search and replace, you could repeat that search and replace using the minibar in Emacs, and I don't use VI, but I'm pretty sure that VI had the same thing, where you could basically say, look, I did something just now, I want to do that thing again. And as long as I haven't done any other commands in the meantime, I can just do it. If I have done other commands in the meantime, again, don't know about VI, but at least in Emacs, you could effectively say, give me a list, right? Like, show me the last 10 search and replaces I did or whatever, and I'm going to pick one to do again, right? So one of the things that I definitely lost when I went to 4coder is I couldn't do that anymore. Now, it wasn't very good in Emacs. Support was not great, but it was nice to have. And so one of the things that I've often thought about is how would I re-implement a feature that allowed me access to that same sort of thing that Emacs and I'm pretty sure VI can do. How could I put that back into 4coder in a way that makes sense for me in the way I edit? Can I make it better? Can I improve it for my use case? And what I was thinking is what I'd really like it to just say, look, every time I do something, it kind of goes into like a stack of things I can do. But rather than those things being buried behind some editor facade, which is what happened like in Emacs and certainly happens in VI because anything in VI is always hidden behind some crazy facade. Let's just make it explicit. So every time I do something, let's put it, that's where I came up with this idea of the fbin and fbar. Anytime I do something, let's just put it down in a bin, right? And if you want to do it again, you just hit the F key that corresponds to that bin. That's it, right? That's all you have to do. Furthermore, let's standardize on the way that the bins are organized and listed. So for example, if I jump to a particular function, then that's a command of jump with the function name as the function or something, right? As the first parameter. If I wanted to do a search inside the buffer for that text, then the command would be search and the name of that function. If I wanted to do a search and replace, it would be search and replace, the name of that function, and the thing to replace it to. And so there's always this sort of binary op style of what is the thing you were trying to do, what is the parameter A, and what is parameter B. Now, why do I care about that? Because then what I can do is I can introduce operations between bins, so I can, use this idea of selecting a bin and say, oh, bin 4 has a search and replace that's basically what I want, and I still want to keep it there, or maybe I don't. Let's say it still has the search and replace I want, I just want to edit the second parameter. I'll just have a key on the keyboard that lets me change just the second parameter. So I don't have to start a whole search and replace and type in the thing to replace again, right? I can just change the second parameter and go. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe I just want to change the first parameter, right? Similarly, maybe it's got exactly what I want in terms of the first parameter, but it's the wrong command. So instead of the command being search and replace, I just want search. Well, I should be able to do that really quickly too, right? So what I want to do is basically see if I can get some leverage out of this by including locations in files, parameter names to those kinds of functions, and then a set of different commands. What can I do to make this work pretty well? And then the two big things that I don't really know how it should work, but it's going to be sensitive and I'll probably have to figure out a good solution, is every time I'm doing something like jumping around a file or anything like that, it's going to, overwrite something in the bin bar, right, in the F bar. And so I need some policy for saying keep this thing around or don't, and what gets evicted. Probably like least recently used gets evicted, you know, or something. I don't know. And so we need some way of being intelligent about what gets removed and what doesn't, because that's going to be the other really important aspect of making this useful. If we assume it's useful at all. So lots of other things. The active part also can determine what like next and previous do. So one of the big problems I have in 4coder all the time right now is that if I do a compile and then I do a search, I can't step forwards and backwards for the things in the compile, the error message of the compile, and the things in the search interchangeably. It's like whatever the last one was, that's the one that it's going to use. And I can't go back to a previous one. And the same would be true of searching. I search once, I search again, I lose all my previous search and my place in those listings if I was trying to go up and down on it, right? And so I also want, as part of this, anytime you do the command, I want to just save the buffer. So basically every fbin would have its own like buffer backing it. And these buffers would just be whenever I make one of these active, that's the buffer that gets displayed in here. And it's the buffer that should have the forward and backwards motion on it occurring, so that I can just have like 12 searches open if that's what I want and ping pong around them however I want. And I don't have to worry about 4coder having this kind of concept of what the most recent one was, right? And so that's what I want to try and get to. Now, in order to do that, again, I need some way, we'll get out of the experimental 4coder and back to the actual 4coder here that we're looking at. One thing I meant to mention is there's also this scope context stuff now. That's going to get upgraded a little bit, I think, in the future. But basically what that is if you're inside of a scope that you can't see, so like there, for example, it will show you like as much information as it can about that scope. So you can see it says this outer enclosing brace that you can't see right here is this if statement. And this outer enclosing brace that you can't see is this for statement. And this outer enclosing brace that you can't see is this function, right? Which is pretty awesome. I was really psyched about that feature. It's pretty neat. It also, if it has room, will do small else clauses as well if you can't see the if. So for example, even if you can see the clause, you can see here, it'll try to put the if in there, but the problem is if it doesn't have room. So the reason I was going to probably change from doing it this way is I think what I'm going to try and do is put it on the close brace here anytime it can. So, you know, in this case, it can't. There's no close brace, so it'll continue to draw it here. But for all of these, it'll just put it after the close brace. That way you always know which close brace is associated with which open brace statement, which is pretty handy. So that's what those are. People are probably wondering what that junk is that's showing up there. Okay, let me see here. So fbar, let's talk about this. So I haven't started this. Again, all I did was bind it up and make it so that I've got the two things that I said I wanted, which was execute fbin and select fbin. And so what I need to do now there's a bunch of things, but first of all, I want every one of these bins to have a backing buffer. So in order to do that, I need something in here that's like a buffer ID. So every time I have an fbin, it's got a buffer. And so when we initialize the fbar here, that fbar is going to create buffers for everything. So I'm going to need a thing that's like, you know, init fbar. And so I'll pass it the fbar and say, look, this is your chance to go through and make sure everything's kosher. So this will go through everything in the entire fbar. So like for each of these guys, go ahead and give me an fbar. out of the, I'm sorry, go ahead and give me an fbin out of the fbar. So every time I get one of those, I then need to set in the, in the fbin here, I need to set the buffer to be essentially an fbin buffer that I create whose sole job it is to like capture data, right? And this thing is going to be, these fbins are going to completely replace the 4coder notion of the build buffer and the search buffer and stuff like that, right? That it has. Hold on while what do you think? You know what? Here's a question for chat. Let's just figure this out, right? So is it going to be a tonic water or a ginger ale next? I want to open one of them and drink it. Again, I have to get 100% of my calories essentially through sugar water today. Pretty much, period. So, we gotta keep it going on here. Otherwise, I'm just going to crash. It's already surprising if I'll be able to code with having had no food. But, we'll see. But give me the verdict. Like, tell me what we're going to do. Are we going to do... are we going to do ginger ale, or are we going to do... let's see here. It looks like ginger ale's kind of winning. All right. Looks like ginger ale. We're going to drink the tonic water eventually, so that'll come next. All right, here comes the ginger ale. Oh no! It fizzed on me. Well, not really on me, but it fizzed on my stuff. Thankfully, nothing did not fizz on anything important, like computer hardware. All right. So what we need to do here is we essentially need to create one of these temporary buffers that 4coder often uses to represent stuff that's transient, like a search result and so on. Now, I've actually never done that in 4coder, so it's going to be a little bit of an adventure for me because I don't really know much about compilation and stuff like that. So you can see here, this is how we're currently doing the build, and the global compilation buffer name thing here, you can see I have defined, right? And I guess, although I don't really know, that this exec system command must just create this if it doesn't exist, I guess. So I don't know exec. One thing I should mention is the jump stuff does not work for things defined in a macro. That should have been found, though. I wonder why that wasn't found. Do we know why that wasn't found? That seems pretty weird that none of the functions in this file got found. I wonder if there's a parsing bug that happens only in this file. For example, you can see that it finds this function just fine. It found that function just fine. In fact, all of these are just fine. Until it gets to this, it looks like this API export is somehow confusing it. But I can't think of why that would be true. Oh gosh, you know what? I bet it's because comments are not ignored in the parser. Let's fix that. Again, this parser is really janky. I mean, it's the thing that I kind of hack, because here's the really super annoying thing. I think C was a pretty good language for what it wanted to do. There's only really one thing I think they got wrong for their time, you know? And that was they made the syntax unnecessarily hard to parse. They could have just had a function keyword, you know? Just that would have been so good, right? A cast keyword. Just cast, parentheses. Or something, right? Like, just a couple little minor additions of just one or two keywords, and we could just parse it for real, right? And I guess maybe the other thing I would say is if you had some kind of a prohibition on the way that pound defines could work. I mean, I guess technically the preprocessor makes it really impossible to parse because you have to have the entire state of the preprocessor at any time to know. So it's not quite as straightforward as I'm making it sound, but I do think that there was a chance there to have made something pretty easy to parse. And that's really my only complaint for what they were trying to do. I mean, we can imagine much better languages today, but that's with incredible amounts of hindsight. All right, so let's take a look here at the parsing part of this. We don't care about parsing comment, but here we are at add buffer to index. And so that particular case is looking at a function, right? And so the way that that case works is you can see it kind of doing this thing here where it goes and tries to find the first identifier in question. And so the way that this starts out is it says, look, if I've got a brace, then let's back up from the brace and see if it's CPP token parentheses close. You can see exactly what the problem is. The problem is that if it were to return a comment, this would fail. And that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to find this brace. It's going to look at the previous token, and that previous token is a comment, and that's not going to work, right? So what we want to do here instead is say something like CPP token, you know, comment pass. Get this thing. And then just do, look, let's get this thing, and while it's a comment, because we don't want those, keep going. Again, total hack, but this whole thing is a total hack. So, you know, not a huge loss. We're just trying to get something that does what we want for our code base. Okay, and so if I were to fix that here, yeah, it's fine. What I would expect now is that if I run 4coder on itself, I'm hoping that we fix that problem. And so now in the new version, if I do exec system command, I expect to find it, and I do. So that was just an oversight there. That was just like, one of the things I forget sometimes is Alan's parser puts comments into tokens. And when I write parsers, I generally do this thing that's a two-tier. So if you say get token, you will not see comments. If you say get raw token, you will see comments in white space. So you can control like the level of token iteration you're doing. And I forget sometimes when I'm doing a hacky parser inside someone else's, you know, token stream, I sometimes forget the fact that, you know, here's decisions they made, here's decisions I made, and I just forget stuff like that. So anyway, that's all good. So we can put that to rest here. But anyway, back to what we're talking about. So exec system command, that takes this buffer identifier concept. Now, a buffer identifier and a buffer ID are actually different, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's actually true. So, like, for example, buffer identifier. Let me see here. Yeah. Yeah, so buffer identifiers take like the string and the length and so on. Oh, one other thing I should mention in Alan's code, the parser stuff doesn't really work very well for stuff that's in the public API because he does this thing where he uses struct in caps. And of course, we don't expand macros, so we would never pick that up. Again, like I said, we're not really parsing the C, so it only works if it's code that looks roughly like mine. Okay. So the buffer identifier in this case, I'll move that so it's out of the sunlight, can basically say, look, this is just a string that identifies this buffer. I guess if you try to switch to it, it will automatically do that. I don't actually know. What I don't really know is, does it just automatically create it for you? I guess. And you can see here creating one of these things. And yeah, what I don't really know is what that So I guess if I'm looking at this, there isn't really a function that's just like, get me a buffer or create it. But I'm going to make one, right? Because that's what I want to do. So I want this thing effectively to do that, I guess. Although technically at startup, I guess I always know that it doesn't exist. So I guess I don't really have to do that. I guess all I really have to do is this. Working set alloc always, push string buffer bind name, init read only file. Right? Now, I would have assumed that there was a function for this. But I guess not. So, it's a little bit weird for me to be doing this. Yeah, I feel like there should be just create temporary buffer call, but it doesn't look like there is. I'm not really sure. So I'm going to start a little bit tenderly here. And I guess what I'm going to say is, look, let's cut out the part of this code that we think we're going to need, right? Which is that we need to do this. We need to do this. And we need to do this. I don't think we need to look up any of the process stuff because that's going to be specific just to builds. And we certainly don't need to do any of this reporting. That's unnecessary as well. We don't need to clear it because there shouldn't be anything in it, but we do need to set it as unimportant. That's a flag that lets 4coder know that we don't want to switch to it. So we don't want it to be like matched when we're doing file switching. We want it to be like listed last and stuff like that. I think that's what it means. You know what? Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure what that actually means, so maybe that's not true. Anyway. So in terms of this stuff here, where we're doing this bind to new view, that stuff, that's probably a separate part where we want to like bring stuff into the view. That's going to be part of the select fbin sort of thing. And so that's probably going to be really more like this code up here. And so when we're doing that, it's probably more this kind of a thing. So yeah, we don't need that. We really just need this. And in order to do view set file, that's an internal call. So we really don't want that per se. We want a like view buffer or something like this. I'll be honest, I don't really remember what that call is. Here it is. So we just want to do this, right? So I don't think we need any of that, honestly. That's just internal code that we probably can't call. So what we want to do is in here is we want to set, anytime you select an fbin, we want the buffer, this buffer, to be showing that information. So it's got the buffer ID here, right? So I know that part of it. I'm going to need to receive the application links here. That's basically just the thing that lets us do stuff with 4coder. I don't know what the 0 is there, and then the buffer is just the buffer. The view is not so bad because I actually don't need to call getActiveView. I know which view it is at all times because I actually, that sort of fbar bin down there at the bottom, I just have a global for, so that thing is just a global, it's HUD view is what it's called. I should probably call it the fbar view from now on, but so in theory, at any time, I can just get the view summary for that. I can set it to be whatever the active fbin's buffer is. So if I just say, look, give me this particular one, I should then be able to say, switch to that particular buffer. Now, part of that, and I you know what, I should really see what is view set buffer. So when you do view set buffer, you're sending down set buffer flags. And I don't know what the set buffer flags actually are. It looks like there's a thing for those. Is that not in here? There. So here's the set buffer flag. If set buffer flag gives you then when the file is set, the view will not switch to it if some other GUI was currently up. Otherwise, any GUI that is up is closed and the view switches to the file. So I don't think that's probably super relevant to us. I don't really know. So I think we can leave that as a 0. So I think this is all we really need to do here. I can also do a thing where I say, hey, get active fbin buffer or something like this, where I'm going to say, look, I need to do a build, so it's going to go into the active fbin buffer or whatever. Well, you know what? Let's not do that yet. We got to think that through a little bit better. Anyway, so what we now need to do is make sure this stuff works at all. And this stuff, I don't know how we're going to make this work because we're doing this outside. So we have to create a buffer and do effectively these things, but we probably can't actually call any of this stuff, right? So we need a way of creating a read-only file, but we need a way of doing it through the 4coder API as opposed to an internal thing. So I don't know how to do that. Let's take a look. So here's the create buffer call. There's the working set alloc always. There's the buffer by name. This unfortunately is init normal file, whereas we want read only. And I'm not sure how to do that. So I'm going to look for init read only file. So does that mean I can't create a read only file? But how does search do it? I mean, when you create a search, like here's list all functions, right? And so it does this thing here, and it's like get buffer by name. Ah, okay. All right, okay. So this is what we need to do here. Here we go. Perfect. So here in init fbar, what I can do is I can call the buffer set setting, which hopefully, maybe, possibly, let's say it might do something. Let's do that and assume that this is good enough for replicating what's happening there on the unimportant thing. As you can see, it's got the read-only flag. You can see it's got the unimportant flag. That seems good, right? Now, here in the get buffer by name thing, I don't really want that. Good. So basically what I can do is just skip right to this because I know that this buffer does not exist, right? So there's the decals buffer. That will create it for me. It'll set all the correct settings on it. And so now all I need is the buffer name, right? Yeah. That seems good. So I need a name for each of these fbar buffers, and that's fine because it's really just going to be like fbar %d, right? So all I need to do is prep that first. So if I just say, look, give me fbar and then whatever the number of the thing is, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. Create all of those. This right here, I just need to do like a make string. And in fact, I can do a make string right on this because what it needs is the size and the string, so I can just do that. Right? And so I do make lit string. Off you go. It makes the buffer of whatever this buffer name is here, right? So there's buffer name. And the wrapping point is set wrong right now, which is kind of annoying, but I can fix that a little bit later. So here's the buffer that we've created. Now we've done everything that we need to do to it. And so finally, at the end of all that, we just need to save what it was, right? So that should do that. And I think that's all we need. We now need to go, like I said before, we need the application links. We can't do anything without the application links. That's the thing that allows us to actually access 4coder's API, which means that all the stuff in here needs to get that sent down. All right. Looks like we've got an error there. What is the error? Right. I think that should just be make string. So now I've got this notion of switching between these fbar buffers. Don't really know what's going to happen with it, but the idea is that you should be able to switch between them. We wouldn't really know. Oh, well, you know what we could do? So what we could do is call append. And if we call append, then we should be able to see inside our 4coder here. Well, I guess it's actually buffer replace range. Yeah. So if in here I do a buffer replace range, that will allow me to insert into the buffer. So, you know, this buffer that we've got here at the very beginning, start and string and length. So I should be able to do buffer name dot stir and a buffer name dot size to just make the contents of the buffer just be fbin so I can see it. And then when I switch between them and do the selection, I should be able to see that change, right? Now, obviously, none of this is going to work if we don't actually init this thing, so I need to call it when we actually start up, or nothing's going to happen. So when we actually have the start hook, Casey start, in here, before I do anything else, I can go ahead and call it. Now, default 4coder initialize, I don't know if some of this stuff should happen first. Probably should. I don't know. So I might go ahead and just put it down here at the bottom. So something like that, where we just say, look, initialize the global fbar, you know, have fun. That, I think, should get us to the point where we can actually switch buffers down there. I hope. It's tonic time, by the way. If you want to get really excited, I made my own apple juice jello. I'm not sure when it'll be done. I think 4 hours, so 2 hours on stream. If we do a second stream later, we could eat some apple jello. It's literally just apple juice with gelatin in it. Anyway, so, you know, watch for that. Anyway, let's go here to init fbar. This thing should, you know, insert the stuff for us. I'm going to see if I can make that, like if I can, oh, I don't need to do that. Sorry, I can do it from here. I'm going to see if I can make that show me something down at the bottom. I don't know if it will, you know, we'll find out. But here is that fbar. I'm going to switch to command mode and now select. Yeah, okay. So this is kind of nice. Like we can select the fbar of our choice and we get, you know, those buffers showing up exactly as we would want. Now, mind you, I don't actually know how to tell 4coder to start the buffer display somewhere below this thing. That is going to be a bit of a trip. I don't want to go diving into the 4coder core without Alan's permission on stream. because I don't know if he's okay with me streaming edits to the core. I don't think he's watching, so we can't really ask him. But I'm not going to do that. So if I had to do that, I'd probably go do that off stream. But we can get everything working just drawing wrong. And then I just need to figure out how I'm going to make that work. Because at the moment, I don't really know a way to tell 4coder that I need a margin at the top of the screen for some crap that I'm drawing. I don't know how you make that happen. By the time I get to the render, I think it's too late because it kind of has this idea about where stuff is in the buffer that's like very specific. And so I don't know. I mean, I could try maybe setting the scroll position to be like negative, but I don't know if 4coder is okay with that. Like, in other words, if I told 4coder that the scrolling position was like an illegal position, something that forced it to be viewing up from where it actually is, maybe it allows that. I mean, it might. And if it does, I think we're okay. And I can talk about why in a second, but that might work. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is let's just take the simple step of seeing if I can make like searches and crap like that and build. Let's see if I can make those target one of the F bins instead of the buffers they're currently using. So for example, like I've got the like global compilation buffer name. Let's just go ahead and get rid of that and see if we can make it use an F bin instead. I also don't know what lock jump buffer means, but my hope is that if like lock jump buffer is something you can just call on any buffer, and then that becomes the new buffer that you're going to go like up and down in when you do like error, jump to next error, that sort of stuff. That would be really nice because that would give us an easy way to do one of the other features I want, which is like whichever one of your buffers is the active buffer is going to be able to be used as like, you know, previous and next and all that stuff. If it's as simple as calling lock jump buffer, that would be nice. I don't know that it will be. We can look. All right, looks like that's implemented in the custom layer. So, So all it's doing is storing the name of the buffer that's like jump locked at that time. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to make of that exactly, because, like, for example, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Get view for locked jump buffer, but why would you need a view? Like, you should be able to use a jump buffer just as a buffer. So who exactly calls that? Maybe nobody. Okay. So here we are in get locked jump state, which I don't know what that does. In jump direct, in jumping, seek jump, and that's like skip repeats. Okay. So yeah, like, it's a bit of a bummer because I don't really want to do what this is doing, right? Like, the way that this code is set up, it's basically saying, I need you to actually have a view bound to this buffer or I won't execute the jump. But I don't know that we really want that to be a limitation. I guess it's not the worst limitation in the world. It's just not what I would have preferred. Because if you switch away from the active jump buffer to some other fbin that isn't a jump bin, like it's a search and replace or something, so it doesn't have the notion. I don't know. It's probably fine. We can just work with it for now, and it might just never be an issue, so it's fine. I don't know. Anyway, so if I'm in select fbin here and I set the buffer, I'm just gonna lock this as a jump buffer because I can, and just try and stop me, right? So lock jump buffer with the buffer here. I guess I don't even have to pass the thing, so I can literally just say this is the buffer, right? Does it need? It's a buffer summary. So I don't know why there isn't a little bit more flexibility between buffer summaries and buffer IDs, but I guess that's just how it is. So let's get this buffer summary going here. So I think I can just call that and say, you know what, give me back the buffer, and then we'll lock that as the jump buffer, right? So that allows me to switch between buffers that have had jumpable stuff in it, like a search or a build. And so then all I think I really need to do is anytime that we're going to execute a build or a search, try and force those things to occur on the buffer that is the currently most likely to want that. At the moment, I'm going to do that wrong. Let's do this. I'm going to do it intentionally wrong. Because, like I said, I don't know what our replacement policy is going to be for these fbins. So, I don't know. Also, Jim, the reason I need to know about jump buffers is because builds go into jump buffers. Know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Also, I've read the sequel. What do you mean, man? Alan and I are totally in it to win it on 4coder. I'm like adding to 4coder as we speak. Anyway, so let's have a way of getting the fbin here more quickly. I probably should have done this to begin with. So here we just say, you know, and I'll just make this use the global as well. So in here we'll just say, if you want to get one of these things, then we do this, and off it goes. It gets you the global fbar bins, and so maybe this stuff doesn't really need the fbar in question. And well, yeah, I'll leave it in there. We'll do it like this. How's that? So this way, you can call it either way. And everyone's happy. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to try using like get fbin here, so that instead of the way the compilation buffer stuff is working right now, in my code, we'll just make compilations, or we'll try to make compilations work that way. So in here where we have like compilation, I'm just going to get rid of that. And so now everywhere that we were previously using that, we'll try to redirect it towards one of these fbin things, right? I don't know what's going on here. Nothing good. Should actually be called result. That should be an address of. Select fbin. Get buffer fbin buffer. So is get buffer not an actual? So, oh right, there's this weird access all thing. All right, so now we can get back to the task at hand, which is in here we have this buffer identifier and this lock jump buffer sort of thing. I don't think we need to do this anymore. Oops. I think that's just not necessary. And then this exec command thing, that's going to be like, I'm going to do a get fbin. And I guess what I want to do here is like get target fbin. And that is going to be where you call get fbin on whatever the active one is. Let's do it this way. Bar active fbin. So this will just target whatever the active one is. Eventually we got to think about what that replacement path can be. I don't know. But we're going to do the best we can. And so, you know, this will just do result like so. All right, so global compilation buffer name is now only used there, and I think that's the only place. So now all we have to do is make a buffer identifier out of the get target fbin here. And the get target fbin call will return us an fbin, and we'll just get the buffer out of it, and we'll say use that one. And I think that's all we need. So I don't really know if this will work because I don't really understand the internals of that part of 4coder well at all. But now if I'm in this mode, right, I can select these bins. I can hit build, and in theory it should build, right? And I should be able to build in any one of them and switch back. Okay. So that seems to work just fine. Now the question is, what if we actually had something that actually does build and potentially produces errors, right? So let's say we loaded up handmade ray and hit build, right? Okay, well that's not very good because that's not. And in fact, oh crudums. Right. So this is not as easy as it sounds. We do have one issue there, and that is that when you switch projects, we kill all of our buffers. So when that happens, we have to initialize the fbar again. Right? Everything has to get remade because all of those buffers have been destroyed. I don't know if this is the best way to do this. Maybe we should just prevent those buffers from being destroyed. I don't know what to do there. So there's a thing called close all files. You can see it happening here. I want all of the buffers to be killed, but maybe what I really want to do is kill everything that's not an fbar buffer, I guess. So maybe I'll do like is fbar buffer. I don't know, right? So like we're gonna kill this buffer. We advance to the next one. Then we say, look, is this one an fbar buffer? And we say, here it is. So we'll just, you know what I'm saying to you? Something like that. And so that way we can pass the ID that we're like about to kill, and then we'll just scan the fbar to see like, is that one of ours? And if it is, just like leave it alone, please. You know? So if the bin buffer equals the ID that's passed, then it's true. That's like all I can really think of as maybe the easiest solution there. It looks like B32 is not a thing that I defined. It's B32X. Sorry. Let's do that. All right. That's all good. And so now, hopefully, I can do the test that I was trying to do before. And again, I say hopefully. So I run it. Here it is. We switch to handmade ray. I ask it to build. There it goes. Oops. So that's good. So let's suppose that I have some errors. So I'm going to insert some errors into handmade ray. Just judiciously. Right. And so now if I'm on, you know, fbar 4 here and I build, I should be able to jump between these errors, right? Oops. Although, oh, right, I changed those hotkeys. So it is jumping between the errors on there. It won't jump now. If I come back, it does jump. That seems like it works. That seems like it works. So, you know, I don't want to declare victory yet because I don't really know if that's quite right, but that seems like it works. So that seems okay. Let's try something a little harder now. Let's try search. So in terms of what I've got for search, obviously there's incremental search. That's not one that has to work with a jump buffer, so we can save looking at that until a little later on. We do want that to interact with the fbins, so we do have to sort of deal with that. But let's just try regular search. How much time do we have here? We got 200, so we got about 15 minutes. So let's try and get some of the search stuff working here. All right. So let's suppose we take one of the searches that I have. I don't think I've got many anymore because I use jump listers for a lot of stuff now, which will work a slightly different way when we merge those into the fbin. But for things that actually dump a bunch of gunk out into an actual buffer, and then we jump around, what we need to do is have some way of targeting those back at the fbin. So let's see what my modal commands are here. So I think the only ones we really have are list all locations and list all substring locations case insensitive. So basically, K is like whole tokens, and L is like anywhere this string ever, even embedded in other stuff, occurs, right? List all locations of type definition isn't really a thing anymore because I kind of just have that is done. So I don't know where that actually is. List all locations. So list all locations of type definition I don't need anymore. That's a thing that is defined in 4coder search. So that's not my call. So I can just make that an unused key and we can bind it to something useful later. Jump to index and jump to definition are the good jump listers I made. So those obviously want to remain. List all locations and list all substring locations. Those are probably going to get condensed into one thing, but point being, those are actually the ones we care about. So list all substring locations case sensitive. That's really the one that I use for just search for this string everywhere. So we really want that one to work. So if I look at list all substring locations case insensitive, what I need to do is look at how that's working and how I can target it at a different buffer. This is going to be kind of difficult, unfortunately, because the way this is going to work, I don't know if I can set the buffer that it's going to target very easily. Probably not. So we'll see. Anyway, query the user for a string and list all case insensitive things. So you can see it getting whatever the view is that you're going to use. And it does list query parameters, global heap, global part, true, true, target view. So it looks like list query parameters is actually the thing we're talking about here. So that does a get query string, which allows you to get back what you were looking for, and then do a list single parameters thing on it, which looks like what you want. Because it gets past the default target view, I guess really all I have to do, though, is change this thing. So I can do this pretty easily. This is great. All I have to do is make my own function that passes the view that is the one that happens to have our fbin in it. Now, it's a little unfortunate. I don't understand why this takes a view, because why couldn't it just take a buffer? Probably because it does a lock jump buffer on it after. So let me just investigate a little bit further, because it would be nice if this just targeted a buffer and not a view. But we can work around it even if it does. So, again, not the end of the world. So let me go ahead and jump to list query parameters. That calls list single parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and do list single parameters. This takes that target view. You can see here, again, we're just kind of peeling the onion and getting down to default that pass their list parameters, which pass the default target view. So in terms of default target view, this is what I'm curious about. Yeah, exactly like I thought. Doesn't actually get used at all, right? It's just getting the buffer. So, I would argue that this function probably should be broken into two parts so that doesn't have to happen, right? If we made this function so that it took the buffer here, then this part could be done by somebody else. And that way you're always targeting a buffer and you're not targeting a view, which is not, what we want. So I guess what I would say is, and you see it's doing the lit string here. So I guess what I'd say is we really want to do is we want to basically force this split. And I'm just going to say, hey, Alan, let's have that happen on arbitrary buffers, right? And so that way, if we just cut out this code, right? And then we said, use that code here. And then call it. And this will just be like, list parameters buffer, and here we just say buffer ID search buffer ID. I think that's literally all we need to do. And I'll try to keep Alan's code style there. He likes to have the brace squash up to the previous line. So if we just did that, then this call could happen right down here immediately after, and then that way you can call into that part of the call chain in either place. So all the existing code will work, but then code like ours that wants to have multiple search buffers just can, and there's nothing weird about it, right? So hopefully that will work. If I recompile this, I'm hoping I will just get... oh, right, that lock has to happen out here. I'm hoping I will just get the exact same behavior now, and there'll be no weirdness, right? So that should work. I can also still force this. Like, I don't know if we want to or not. I'm guessing we don't, because I'm trying to control that now. But, like, you could also put it here and just pass the buffer ID, because lock jump buffer will split the buffer ID out to the name if you needed to and stuff like that. So I think that's fine, right? Okay. So now that we've done that, I should be able to call this function instead with the things that I actually need, and it should work. So instead of calling list all substring locations case insensitive, I need to make a new function that will do this thing that we actually needed to do, and it will call this function here, and it will call it with a bunch of stuff that I don't understand. And so we're going to have to actually sort of comb through that custom source code to like figure out what we actually need to do to prep this function. So that's our next job. Custom command sig here, we'll just call this Casey list. I'm going to literally call it the same darn thing. And so we'll probably call this something like fbar. We'll probably move. So eventually what we're going to do when we want these things to store the ops that they did, we're going to start moving all of these commands into the fbar, and the fbar will like use the ops that happen automatically and stuff like that. You know, it'll get, it'll be all Mr. Fancy Pants up in here and all that. But for the moment, right, we're just trying to do like basic baby steps to start to put things in the correct place. So now let's go try to recreate that function call chain one thing at a time. And so I'm first going to go to that list all substring locations case insensitive. And we should be able to just do the same thing. So if I come back in here and I just paste that in, you know, we need this target view. And then, oh, well, I guess that's it. So then we're just going to do list query parameters. Now, for getting the target view, again, I just want the search buffer and that sort of stuff. So in terms of the target view, I think I do want to do this. Later, I might change my mind about where that's going to happen. But for now, it can just happen in the same buffer you were normally using for now, right? So we'll do that. And then we need to go to this right here, right? List query parameters. And so here we need to do this. And then here we need to do this. And then at that point, I think we can dispatch to this, he says, so confidently. But I think that's it, right? Because then we've gotten down to the place where we split. So looking at this, right, here's the stuff that we know that we want. Substring, whole word, case insensitive. So we can actually simplify this whole rigmarole by just welding it together, right? We don't need any parameterization here at the moment because we only support one thing. Now in the future we might support more, and then I'll break it out a little bit differently, but there we go. And then of course we also don't need to call this thing until we actually know that we got back a query string. Okay, so that gets back a query string and stuffs it in that space thing or whatever. That's fine, don't care. And then we call this thing. What you can see here is, I don't know about the heap scratch stuff and the strings count nonsense. So I got to go see what we did there exactly in terms of how we were passing this stuff in. So, like looking at the count is just 1, and the strings are just the address of this. So it looks like I could have done multiple strings that you search for at the same time. And you know, that's pretty cool. So really what I want there is like, you know, string count and strings, and like at the moment it doesn't actually work, but you know, you could imagine at some point it actually did. So for right now, we'll just thunk it exactly the way that it was being thunked before, and then later we'll figure out how we might take advantage of that feature, because that's a pretty cool feature. I like that. Heap scratch, let's hope those get passed to custom command sig. I have no idea. I'm just going to hope that they do. Buffer ID is actually pretty easy for us, right? That's just getting that target fbin. So in here where we do get target fbin, I can just have that happen whenever we get a valid one of these. Whenever we get a valid search string, I can just say, look, give me the bin, and then that will take care of this. Right? I don't know if that's going to work. We're going to try and hopefully not fail. I think that's all we need. So heap and scratch, I don't know how to get those. So let's take a look at how those were happening before. Because I'm pretty sure list query parameters already had them by the time we got down here. So they all must have came from the list all locations, not blah, 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 right? Like the... So it's just passing the global heap and the global partition. That's what it's passing, right? I don't really understand why it needs those two things, but I'm guessing that the reason is because you might want it to use a separate off-band heap sometimes. I don't know why. All right. Anyway, let's just see if that works. So if I launch this guy, and we try some searches, let's see if they work. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's again switch the project to handmade ray, since that's our little test thing now. What I'd like to do is say search for everywhere the word ray appears. That should probably do it, right? Oh, and also I guess let me switch to a particular buffer here. So we'll switch to buffer 4, and we will search for the word ray. So here's all the word ray, and I should be able to like loop through all of the things for the word ray now, and that is happening, right? Let's go to buffer 5 and now search for the word lane, right? So here's all the places that lane goes, and I can search between them. And so now for the money, switch back to 4. Oh yeah, yeah. Awesome. So this is great. Just this alone will make my life so much easier. Just being able to have search buffers up. This is going to be good. All right, so that's great. Let's take a break now. It's about time for the stream to be over. Does anyone have any quick questions? I'll probably come back and do a second one. Because I'm kind of psyched. This is getting close to being what I wanted. Now I just need to start sucking up those ops into the fbar. And then I think we'll be in good shape. Hi Casey, thanks so much for having me here. Do you think there would be any benefit to a programming language of source files not based in plain text? Yes, I do. but which are still edited in a textual way. My thought is that they would be in a binary format optimized for fast compile times, with the possibility of embedding images and other media files documentation, design more intelligent refactoring in mind than search and replace. Do you think that such a language could be blah, blah, blah? I can't see the rest of it because it got cut off. Anyway, yes to all of that. I feel like we should be moving in that direction. I feel like we should have moved in that direction a long time ago. I don't think visual programming has to mean a disastrous collection of crazy wiring like a shader graph. I think there's a lot of other ways that visual programming can happen. And so I feel like you should 100% explore that avenue if it's something that excites you, because we need it. And there's 100,000 things you can think of that might work well, and the problem is you're gonna have to experiment, right? Like the only way to know is to experiment. I already did one, right? I did an experiment on that. That was the math inside comments thing, right? That was an example of how do I augment this text file so that in addition to it having the text that's in it, I also want you to parse the comment, and if you see something that looks like math, perform the operation, right? It's a very simple addition. Could save me a lot of time. It's nice and handy, right? Do the same thing for diagrams. Let me draw a diagram in the comment, remember it in the comment, and when you load it, just parse and show it. Those are some easy ways you can get started without having to reinvent the entire system, and see where it goes. And you can take it further and further and further, right? And like you said, go to a binary file format at some point if you've got a robust enough tool chain that has diffs and stuff. The reason it's hard to go to a binary file format right away is because you lose all of your standard programming tools. You lose merging tools, diffing tools, source code control gets confused, that sort of stuff. So sometimes it helps to start kind of slowly when you want to do incremental stuff like that. When you want to do, I shouldn't say, when you want to do big changes like that, sometimes it helps to be more incremental. Pet the cat. Hello, Molly. How you doing? I'm sorry to wake you. Stream wanted to say hi. That's good, kitten. Yes, that's very good, kitten. Okay, I'll leave you alone now. You're getting good sun. Is Molly Rocket named after Molly or the other way around? The other way around. Anna actually named Molly after Molly Rocket. Thanks to the recommendation to try to make a single header video codec, I've been having fun thinking of all the different things that I would want for a codec, like ease of multi-threaded CPU encoding, etc., that wouldn't have happened if I just contributed to one of the big existing ones. Awesome. I hope you make something cool. Like I said, if it's a simple codec you can just include, it doesn't have to be that great, right? Like, the ease of use of it would be so much better than like MP4 or something that you could just say, just throw it in there, even if the files are twice as big as MP4 and don't look as good or whatever, who knows? I think it would still be useful, because if you just need it to work and you don't want to spend a lot of effort on it, then you're willing to give some things up. So it doesn't have to be the world's greatest video codec to still be useful, right? Because it can be optimized for just simple, keeping it simple, and that has its own value. Are you worried your hot search customizations are pluking too hard? Well, I guess what I would say is it's worth remembering that all government-sponsored recreational activities are clean and efficient. And so while I am somewhat worried about that, I feel like that sort of mitigates some of the concern. All right. I'm going to wrap it up, and I probably will do another stream, but we'll take a break for, I don't know how long we'll take a break, but we'll take a break for a little while. Thanks for joining me for the 4coder customization. I'm going to come back. I think I'm interested in what we're doing here, so I kind of want to keep going down that route. So thanks for joining me, and maybe we will come back and play with this a little bit more a little later on. All right, take it easy, everybody.